Of course, there's been a lot of running of the mouth lately by members of the WNBA Players Association, the union. Most notably, Napheesa Collier talking about we're not backing down. Well, it seems the NBA owners and the WNBA owners are saying without saying, which is kind of what makes this even more glorious, we're not backing down either.
Without saying a word, the NBA just delivered the coldest response in professional sports labor negotiations. The WNBA Players Union submitted their proposal 2 weeks ago, demanding 30% of gross revenue and a salary cap jumping from $1.5 million to $10.5 million. The league's response: radio silence, not a counteroffer, not a negotiation, just complete dismissal. And the deadline hits tomorrow at midnight.
We're not going to acknowledge it. By the way, the deadline is tomorrow. But we know part of this whole thing is the 30% revenue share. The NBA's been very clear. Adam Silver has been clear way back from when he was on with Good Morning America the first day of the National Basketball Association season.
Adam Silver made this crystal clear back in October when he appeared on Good Morning America for the NBA season opener. A reporter asked about WNBA revenue sharing, and his exact words were, "I wouldn't exactly call it revenue sharing. That wasn't a slip of the tongue." That was the commissioner of basketball operations telling you exactly what's not going to happen. The league hasn't generated the kind of revenue that warrants that type of deal. Full stop.
That kind of deal. We're not talking about any other of these sports leagues. The NBA, the NFL, even the NHL, which I meant to make a video on that, but you had somebody out there that's championing women's basketball, trying to claim that the NHL and the WNBA is comparable, and that's laughable. And by the way, fans struck back and struck hard against that BS narrative that was floating around.
Here's where it gets interesting. Fans have actually educated themselves on this situation. They're not just blindly supporting either side. They're looking at the actual numbers, the profit and loss statements, the attendance figures, the television ratings. And a significant portion of the fan base is now asking the players a very direct question. Why would you reject an offer that triples your average salary and eventually gets max contracts to $2 million when your league operates at a loss? The players authorized a strike vote in December, 93% participation rate. 98% voted yes to give the executive committee strike authorization. Those are overwhelming numbers that suggest unity and determination.
And a lot of fans realize now, okay, the league is not profitable. They're looking at the players being offered all this new money and the players not wanting to take it. And I cannot help but think about Caitlin Clark's comments at Team USA at the basketball camp, where she made it very clear there needs to be compromise and we need to play basketball.
But there's one voice that stands out from the rest. Caitlin Clark at the Team USA basketball camp made her position abundantly clear. There needs to be compromise, and we need to play basketball. She understands something that apparently others don't. This league cannot survive a work stoppage. The momentum from her rookie season, the record television ratings, the sold-out arenas, the mainstream media attention, all of that evaporates the moment games get canceled. If this strike touches the regular season, we're not talking about a PR problem. We're talking about an existential crisis for the WNBA.
A little more than 48 hours ahead of the January 9 deadline, the WNBA and the WNBPA remain at odds over the new collective bargaining agreement. According to sources familiar with the negotiations, the union was still awaiting a response from the league to the proposal that they submitted roughly 2 weeks ago as of Wednesday afternoon. In that proposal, the players are seeking approximately 30% of gross revenue and a salary cap of $10.5 million, sources confirmed to Front Office Sports. Details of the union's proposal were first reported by ESPN last week. The league believes the proposal would result in $700 million in losses for the league and its teams over the duration of the CBA, according to that report.
Front Office Sports reported the details on January 8th, less than 48 hours before the deadline. The union submitted their proposal roughly 2 weeks ago, and as of Wednesday afternoon, they were still waiting for a response from the league. That's the part that tells you everything. The league looked at the proposal, ran the numbers, and decided it wasn't even worth countering. According to ESPN's reporting, the league believes this proposal would result in $700 million in losses over the duration of the CBA. $700 million. That's not a negotiating position. That's a business calculation that says this proposal is financially impossible. The math doesn't work. It will never work. Try again. The current salary cap sits at $1.5 million per team. The league offered to increase that to $5 million. That's more than tripling the cap. Average salaries would climb from approximately $120,000 to $530,000 initially, then up to $780,000 by the end of the deal. Max salaries currently sit at $249,000. Under the league's proposal, those max contracts eventually reach almost $2 million.
Quote, "You've heard a lot of chatter about what we're asking for is not sustainable for business," Napheesa Collier said during a Unrivaled broadcast Monday. Once again, going on Unrivaled, talking about the WNBA CBA process, it's a horrible look. It's terrible business. Being on this side with Unrivaled, I know what it takes to run a sustainable business. She got destroyed over this because nobody knows that this league's going to do anything.
And this is where Napheesa Collier stepped into a minefield. She went on the Unrivaled broadcast on Monday and said, "You've heard a lot of chatter about what we're asking for is not sustainable for business. Being on this side with Unrivaled, I know what it takes to run a sustainable business. We've proven that it's possible." The response from fans and media was immediate and brutal. Unrivaled hasn't proven anything yet. The league is operating off investor money. There's no revenue model that's been tested over multiple years. There's no historical data showing profitability. Claiming you understand sustainable business when your league is literally weeks old and funded entirely by venture capital is not the credibility boost she thought it was.
We've proven that it's possible. There's a way we're thriving in that. No, your league, your Unrivaled league is living off investors right now. That's it. You're living off investors. You're not living off the actual profit, yada, yada, yada. Sustainability. When you talk about sustainable, you need to be talking about years upon years before you try to clutch your pearls and try to brag about that. You've got no leg to stand on. You've got no years and years of business data to stand on. That's an absurd comment.
Let's talk about what happens if both sides can't reach an agreement by tomorrow at midnight. The current CBA was set to expire November 30th. Both sides already agreed to 2 extensions. If they can't agree to another extension, a work stoppage becomes possible. But here's the technical detail that matters. It's not automatic. The owners could initiate a lockout. The players could call a strike. Or neither side initiates anything and negotiations enter what's called a period of status quo. Under status quo, the terms of the current CBA remain in effect, while negotiations continue. But here's the catch. If negotiations are under status quo, the union can call a strike at any point without warning. That uncertainty alone creates massive problems for scheduling, television contracts, arena bookings, and sponsor commitments. The players cannot strike without terminating the extended agreement first. That's the legal framework they're operating under. So if the deadline passes tomorrow and nobody blinks, we enter this weird limbo where everyone's operating under the old deal, but a strike could be called at literally any moment.
Expired November 30. Last month, the WNBPA authorized a strike in a vote that included 93% participation from players. 98% voted to allow the league's executive committee to call a strike when necessary. If both sides can't agree to an extension, a work stoppage, whether in the form of a lockout, will be initiated by the owners or a strike initiated by the players. It would not be automatic. If neither side initiates a work stoppage negotiation, it would instead.
There's a growing belief among analysts who aren't carrying water for either side that the league might actually be prepared to shut this down. Not as a negotiating tactic, not as a bluff, but as a genuine business decision. If the players won't accept an offer that more than triples their compensation despite the league operating at a loss, what exactly are the owners supposed to do? Keep hemorrhaging money indefinitely? The NBA has subsidized the WNBA since its founding in 1996. That's 28 years of financial support. The league has never turned an annual profit. Television deals have improved. Attendance has increased in certain markets. Merchandise sales are up, but the bottom line remains red ink.
A salary cap increase. Wow. Under the league's latest proposal, the league's proposed revenue sharing model would lead to max salaries of more than $1.3 million and average salaries of $530,000. However, and this is the important part, over the duration of the deal, those numbers would climb to almost $2 million and $780,000 respectively. I think now they're literally averaging like, what, 200,000, 120,000 or something like that as their average salary? So this would get them up to 780? Their current max salary.
Some insiders believe the players know the 30% revenue share isn't happening. The theory goes that they're making an aggressive public stance to look tough before eventually accepting something closer to the league's current offer. Maybe they negotiate the salary cap up from $5 million to $5.5 or $6 million. Maybe they get some additional concessions on travel accommodations or health benefits or retirement contributions. But the fundamental structure of the deal probably looks much closer to what the league already offered than what the union is demanding. That would explain why Napheesa Collier keeps going on unrivaled broadcasts to talk about not backing down while Caitlin Clark is saying we need compromise. One of them is playing to the crowd. The other one is reading the room correctly. Here's what makes this situation so precarious. The WNBA just completed its most successful season in league history. Caitlin Clark's rookie year drove television ratings that nobody thought were possible. The Indiana Fever went from playing in front of half-empty arenas to selling out every game and having fans travel to away games in massive numbers. Merchandise sales exploded. Mainstream sports media actually covered the league consistently for the first time ever. All of that momentum is sitting on the table right now. And the question is whether the Players Union is willing to gamble it all on a negotiating position that the league has already said is mathematically impossible. Think about the optics for a second. You're a casual fan who just discovered the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. You watched the playoffs. You bought a jersey. You're planning to buy tickets for next season. Then you hear that the players are threatening to strike despite being offered contracts that triple their current salary. Your immediate reaction isn't going to be sympathy for the players. It's going to be confusion about why they're risking the best thing that's ever happened to the league. The hardcore WNBA fans who've supported the league for years might understand the nuances of revenue sharing and long-term financial sustainability. But the new fans who just showed up, they're going to see players making six-figure salaries threatening to strike for seven-figure salaries while the league loses money. That's not a winning PR battle. Now let's talk about what the players are actually asking for with this 30% revenue share. In major professional sports leagues like the NBA and NFL, players receive approximately 50% of revenue, but those leagues generate billions in profit. The NBA's most recent television deal was $24 billion over 9 years. The league is wildly profitable. Revenue sharing makes sense when there's actual revenue to share. The WNBA's television deal with ESPN, CBS, and Amazon is worth $2.2 billion over 11 years, starting in 2026. That sounds impressive until you break it down. That's $200 million per year split across 12 teams. The league also generates revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, and sponsorships. But expenses include player salaries, staff salaries, arena costs, travel, medical, insurance, marketing, and league operations. When you run those numbers, 30% of gross revenue going to players doesn't leave enough to cover the operating costs. The league would be structurally designed to lose money every single year. No business operates that way intentionally. The owners aren't running a charity. They're running basketball franchises that they expect to eventually become profitable. The comparison to the NHL that was floating around social media last week was particularly absurd. Someone tried to argue that the WNBA and NHL have comparable revenue and therefore the WNBA players deserve similar compensation. The NHL generated $6.4 billion in revenue during the 2022 to 2023 season. The WNBA generates roughly $200 million annually. That's not comparable. That's not even in the same universe. Fans absolutely destroyed that narrative within hours. They pulled up the actual financial data, showed the revenue comparisons, explained why the argument made no sense, and the person who made the claim basically disappeared from the conversation. That's what I mean when I say fans have educated themselves. They're not accepting propaganda anymore. They're demanding actual facts and data. Adam Silver has been incredibly patient with this process. He could have taken a much harder public stance. He could have released detailed financial statements showing exactly how much money the league loses each year. He could have made the owners look like victims and the players look greedy. He hasn't done that. He's kept negotiations relatively private and professional. But that silence from the league in response to the union's latest proposal, that speaks louder than any press conference. The league is essentially saying, your proposal is so far outside the realm of possibility that we're not going to dignify it with a counteroffer. Come back with something realistic, or we'll see you at midnight tomorrow. The deadline is January 9th at midnight. That's less than 24 hours from now. Either the players accept something close to the league's existing offer, both sides agree to another extension, or we enter that status quo period where a strike could be called at any moment. There's also the nuclear option where the league just says, we're done, and shuts it down entirely. Nobody really thinks that's going to happen. But 6 months ago, nobody thought the players would reject an offer that triples their salaries either. So maybe we shouldn't assume anything at this point. Caitlin Clark's comments about compromise keep echoing because she's the one person in this entire situation who seems to understand the stakes. She brought millions of new fans to the league, she sold out arenas, she drove television ratings to records, she made the WNBA relevant in mainstream sports conversation. And she's watching the Players Union potentially throw all of that away over a proposal that was never going to be accepted. If this league strikes and the season gets delayed or canceled, it's not coming back the same way. The momentum is gone, the casual fans move on, the television networks start questioning their investment. Sponsors get nervous, and suddenly you're back to playing in half-empty arenas for a league that most sports fans ignore. So here's the question that matters. Was demanding 30% of gross revenue worth risking everything the league just built? Because if games get canceled, that's exactly what's on the line. The players can talk about not backing down all they want, but when the season doesn't start, and the paychecks stop coming, and the fans stop caring, nobody's going to remember who won the negotiation. They're just going to remember who killed the momentum. The clock hits midnight tomorrow. We'll find out if compromise wins or if pride destroys the best opportunity this league has ever had. Drop your prediction in the comments. Do the players accept a deal, or are we headed for a work stoppage? And if you think I'm wrong about any of this, tell me why. Let's talk about it.